I think I'm going to close out the stream tonight with some more of the Lives of Gethra story. We'll read another chapter for the podcast. So let me just update my stream title here. We're going to call this Lives of Gethra podcast. Audiobook story. There you go. Just update that. Oh, I failed to update the settings. There you go. Alright, so let's get this all set up again. Get our map ready here. Before I resize that, let's drop in. Well, who actually is next on our story? Read Dago 7 last time, so this time we're going to read Aralim chapter 4. So we can open up Aralim here. There he is. Oops. Now we might as well rearrange our map here. All right. Aralim 4. Alright guys, here we go. So, I'm going to dive in here with another Aralim chapter. Aralim 4. First of the seventh moon. Let's restart that. Alright. Aralim 4. First of the seventh moon, years since Orish, 1478. It was a painfully long voyage from Lantern Town to Belisa. Aralim had sailed as long before, but never passed leagues upon leagues of forested coast. There were no mountains, only the occasional soft hill rolling up and down in the far distance. They put in toward the land from time to time, and Captain Engel sent hunters to find them food, and foragers to find fruits growing from the trees. Aralim had never tasted such things, clusters of small red berries concealed within a tough outer skin. Mirish laughed and showed him how it was done. Toward the end of the voyage, they passed a number of small isles, at last an interruption to the slow passage of woodland. Perhaps due to their smuggler nature, Engel and his crew never stopped in any of the villages. Aralim suspected they had intentionally avoided many more than he saw when they put in towards the wider sea. When at last the cloud trader breasted the salty waters of Belgrim Bay, Aralim was spending more time pacing the decks than chatting with Mirish about the history of the path and their greatest idols, the men and women to transcend their mortal flesh. She asked him about the significance of her vision, and though he did not know the true impact or knowledge it had revealed, he told her that she had, through her humbleness perhaps, found a clue or a shortcut along the path. The harbor of Belisa was enormous. By far it was the largest port that Aralim had ever seen, with more types of ships than he had ever seen. There were at least 6 full galleons in the make of Radrigar and the Southlands where Aralim was from. There were hundreds of longboats from the jungle lands, and Mirish added the 3 east isles, Keth, Kadar, and Koros. Two crafts that sat in the port of Blesa were completely alien to Aralim, and he asked Mirish about those. She shrugged, not knowing herself. But Captain Angle, standing nearby, chipped in. "Those are barges from Numenacris," the man said with a big grin. Each barge seemed to consist of 2, even 3 ships, shaped like huge tubs. They shared a single enormous sail, which was shuttered, like 10 different folded sails. There were oars sticking off the sides. Quite slow by any standards of the sea, they are like tiny floating cities, the finest of luxuries purchased by the wealthy lords of that land. Aralim and his young friend stared at those in awe. "Do you think you could afford passage aboard one?" Mirish asked him with wide eyes. "I have no idea," Aralim replied. They anchored in the middle of the harbor, and 2 rowboats were assembled to go to shore, one for supplies and the other for passengers and their goods. Aralim sat on a hard wooden bench and held his lantern staff out of the water as they glided toward the docks. Jolas was mostly silent, but Mirish chatted at him quite a bit. She didn't share her glimpse out of time, despite her friendship with him. Once they reached the land, Mirish gave him a teary farewell, and Jolas ran off, eager to see his family after so much time apart. Mirish and Aralim stood on the dock and shook hands with Captain Angar, though Aralim saw Mirish cringe when she did so. The docks were so busy with sailors, trolleys, wheelbarrows, wagons, and all manner of merchant that it took the 2 of them close to an hour to reach the actual streets of Blesa. The noise was almost deafening, and they said not a word to each other the entire time. Aralim got a few nods at his lantern rod, and a few confused stares as well. Once they reached the streets, they found a massive avenue, probably 20 feet wide, with big broad-leaf trees growing through the middle of it. Beneath the shadows of the evergreen leaves, Aralim and Mirish wandered through Blesa. At first, Aralim thought they were looking for shelter, in the hopes of someone offering them a room or something, but after a while he realized Mirish must have a plan of her own. Aralim was content to follow. "Shouldn't I have my own lantern?" Mirish asked, when they weren't pressing through the clusters of citizens. "If you want," Aralim said. "I've seen many groups of pathwalkers that have only one lantern to share the light with one another." Mirish pursed her lips and nodded. She had let her hair down from the bun she usually kept it in, to show off perhaps, as they walked through the city. Her hair was wiry and dry and a sandy color. "Come on," she said, and pointed toward the guardhouse they were passing. "Why?" Aralim asked. She shrugged. "Those guys on the ship, they were smugglers. That's against the law." "So?" Mirish stopped and looked at him. "So we have to tell the guards. It's the right thing to do." Aralim had not heard many walkers of the path speak about what was right or wrong. Power and enlightenment were much more important, but the young girl was far beyond his own powers, so she likely knew some clue he did not, something hidden in the right, good action. "Well, it's your plan, your job," he said, and followed her toward the guardhouse. The door was propped open with a wooden bucket and a mop that sat inside it. Inside were 3 men, playing some game of cards with scraps of paper that were so worn out they were nothing but cloth-like tatters. One of them glanced up and saw the 2 newcomers approaching the door, but he just looked back down at his cards without saying a word. Mira stepped inside first, and Aralim followed her, leaving his lantern staff leaning against the inside of the door frame. The candle within was not lit. "Can we help you?" asked one of the guards, as though his mouth was full. It was not. They all wore uniforms, but not well. One was fat, and the other skinny enough to be a druggie. The third appeared in good shape, and had a few wrinkles in his green and orange uniform. The stripes and slashes of color were almost lost in the dark building's interior, especially again after the blinding light of the sun outdoors. "I have a crime to report," Mira said, her young voice clear and loud. The man smiled. "Is this your old man? Maybe he should tell us about it." Aralim shrugged. "Just a friend. Girl has no parents." One of the guards mockingly let his grin fade and stood up. He stepped in front of the table, in front of his comrades. This was the professional one, perhaps their leader. He nodded. "I understand. How can we be of assistance?" "There's a ship in the port," Mira said. "The Cloud Trader, captained by Master Engel. They are smugglers, you see. They have a hidden compartment in their cargo hold. It's full of alcohol." The man tried to contain his smile again. "I see." He grabbed the sheaf of paper from the nearest cupboard and scrawled a note across it. "I'll get this to the harbor force at once, madame," he said. The man had a full head of brown hair and tanning white skin. Blesa was mostly white people, like the great isle it was built upon. "Good," Mira said. "Do you need any other information, sir?" "No," the guard said. "This will be good. You two have an excellent day, you hear?" He gave them a smile and put the paper back on the table. By the time that Mirish and Aralim stepped back outdoors, they were already playing cards again. In the sunlight, Mira started walking again, and Aralim fell in beside her. Should we find a higher-ranking lawman? Aralim asked. Get some... No, they'll take care of it, Mira said. It's good. Aralim pursed his lips and nodded to himself. He would heed her words and see how she saw things. In a way, she was more pragmatic than he, but in others, she was more idealistic. It wasn't an altogether different view of the world, merely an overlapping slant on things. Now what? We find shelter? Mirish nodded. Alright. There was Aralim 4. Bam. Alright, guys, I think I'm going to wrap up for the night. A little bit of a slower Monday, so we'll see if we can draw in some more people for the interactive content tomorrow and get things a little bit more lively. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. And yeah, if you're on Twitch here, be sure to follow. If you're on YouTube, hit subscribe. I appreciate all the support you guys can lend my way, and you don't want to miss out if you're gonna play the game. All right, have a good night, guys.